Hi, this is Jennifer with eXp Realty. How can I help you?
Hi, this is Rachel Withers with the Jim Allen Group, Caldwell Banker, Howard Perry in Walston. How can I help you?
Hi, this is Bob Persisepi from Blue Chip Real Estate. How can I help you today?
Hi, this is Misty with Blue Chip Real Estate. How can I help you?
It's so good to see you today on our podcast, Keeping It Real in North Carolina. I'd like to welcome our guests today, Rachel Withers, Jennifer Franklin, Misty Sign from Blue Chip Real Estate, and I'm Bob Persisepi. And thank you so much for listening to our podcasts. And we hope you're getting some content out of this. And today, what we wanted to touch on, we had a podcast a few days ago that was kind of explaining our mastermind, which we call the Work First Mastermind, which is kind of a interesting little experiment that we did. I hope you had an opportunity to watch that podcast. But now we're kind of breaking it down because one of the things that we left out is the fundamental piece of what we do when we mastermind and how to convert that into business. And one thing that the four of us have come to a conclusion on is number one, actually, there's two things actually. Number one is that we actually work first. That's our duty. We work first. And we follow the Floyd Wickman kind of suggestion of working first each day to winning a saleable listing, but we've broken it down to working first. But the most concrete, solid, fundamental thing that we do is our group calling and just the old fashioned things that we do where we pick up the phone and we call people we know, we call people we don't know. And we wanted to share with you individually what all four of us do in terms of who we call, when we call, what are we trying to accomplish when we call, how many calls, anything that we want to share. And I want to kind of go around the group of all four of us, and we're going to share those four things, and we're going to do it quickly and try to keep this podcast, it's fairly succinct. And we hope that you, as our listeners and our viewers, can use this and apply it to whatever your business might be. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific to real estate. It could be any sales type of environment. So I want to start with you, Jennifer, and I'd like to see what you do when you make your calls and who you're calling and when you're calling and what you're trying to accomplish, and just share with us.
Well, thanks, Bob. I'd love to share. So my big piece of business comes from repeat and referral business. So my main goal when I'm making calls is number one, I'm making sure that I have 18 conversations that week. Okay. And so what I do is I'm reaching out to my past clients, I'm reaching out to my friends, my whoever's in my phone. And I am calling them, and I have this little quarterly home sales report that I send out once a quarter to everybody in my database. And so what I'll do is I just take it straight from the MLS. I just pull up the houses that have sold in the last 6 months, either in their neighborhood or right outside of the neighborhood. And I just literally send an email straight from the MLS showing what has sold and what is currently on the market. And I give them a ring and I say, hey, it's Jennifer. How are you doing? You have a nice little conversation with them. Hey, by the way, I sent you your quarterly home sales report. So make sure to take a look at it and let me know if you have any questions. And so my goal is to reach out to at least 30 or up to 30 people in my database for that week. But the main goal is to have 18 conversations. So if I don't get those 18 conversations in, within those 30 calls. After that, I'm going to be reaching out to my expireds in my area or other lead sources that come in. But that is how I bait my call. And I'm just going to give you a little tidbit of advice out there for those of you who are looking to build your database. And you may be saying, well, I don't know who to call to give a quarterly sales report to. You go into your contact list and you start with the A's and you just start calling the first person on your list. Hey, guess what? I offered my all of my clients and my friends, I offer to send them a quarterly home sales report. You explain what it is. And I often say to them, I know that you're not necessarily looking to sell your house. However, this is going to give you knowledge of what homes are selling for and will really give you a good idea of how much equity that you have in your home. And majority of people, they see that as a service. I very rarely have ever had anybody say, no, I don't want that. But you go ahead and you put them into your database and then you just start calling them once a quarter. So that's how I make my calls. So it breaks down to I'm trying to make at least 6 phone calls a day. But I'm definitely keeping an eye on the number of conversations that I'm having. And then, like I say, reaching out to other lead sources once I've done my quarterly calls for the week.
Thank you, Jennifer. That is an awesome strategy, and it gives you some real direction on who you want to really reach out to. And we all know that tracking our numbers is the most important component when you start making calls. What kind of results that you have, and there's a second piece of this is that after we do our mastermind calling together, when we do it as a group, it's kind of cool to either during our group chatting period, we kind of celebrate a successful call and we actually share at the end of our calls what was accomplished. Rachel, how do you make your calls? Who do you call? When do you call? What are you trying to accomplish when you're making calls?
Thanks, Bob. Well, the big piece of my business is open houses. Every weekend, I do at least one open house at one of our new home communities or an infill property in Raleigh. And I usually get a lot of visitors. Some people are ready to buy now, some people are thinking about it, and some people are just looking. But I take down everybody's contact information and I follow up with them regularly, just kind of keep up with them in their process. Somebody could come in and say, oh, they were thinking about remodeling, they wanted to get some ideas, they want to know paint colors. And I just kind of start with there with building a relationship. Remodeling a house is very stressful. So a lot of times, buyers might just kind of forget that idea and decide just to buy a house that's already built. But just kind of having that relationship and following up with them, people come into my open houses and I'm just constantly keeping in contact with them for their next step. It could be a year from now from when they're ready to buy. But that's the big portion of my calls that I do, follow up calls from open houses. I also do calls to expires or for sale by owners. My goal each week is to secure at least one appointment um, every week. So I am at least going out, doing a listing appointment with somebody or meeting with a potential buyer. So I'm going to make those calls until I can at least hit that goal.
It's a great goal, Rachel, and that's a great strategy. Following up on open house guests, because you do a lot of open houses. It does seem to develop the backbone of your business, which is that luxury insider circle that you're trying to build and create. Because follow up with those folks very, very important, especially the volumes that you do. So that's a great strategy. Thank you for sharing, Misty. What do you do? How do you make your calls? Who do you call, and what are you trying to accomplish?
I'm like everybody else. I set a goal every week. I usually try to get in at least 30 calls a week. I don't know why it's 30, but I always set 30. I document everything in my CRM. I use Lone Wolf, which many realtors do for my CRM. And when I call them, I put in the address. I put in, was it an expired listing? Was it a new lead? If I was able to get in touch with them. But here over the past month, I started a new strategy for myself, and that is to also text them. I text them my business card, and I also put in the text, I left you a voicemail. If you would care to give me a call back or text me when is a good time that we can talk. That's how I kind of keep the relationship going. But my strategy is different for whoever I'm calling. If it's an expired, when I start that call, I don't do the standard script that most realtors are taught. When I call an expired listing, nobody wants to be sold. I mean, that's how I feel. I mean, it's like a telemarketer would call me trying to sell me a car warranty. I don't want to be sold on another car warranty. So what I do, like with expireds, is I just simply ask them, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I see, you have your home is an expired listing and it didn't sell. Can we talk about why you think your home didn't sell?" Because that starts the relationship. And I don't try to get in the door with that expired listing right away. We talk for a good 15 minutes and they start telling me about the home. And that's where I start asking. I just ask them, have you done any renovations? Are there any issues with the home? And that's how you build that relationship. And usually by the end of that phone call, that's when we set a time to meet so I can go view the home. So I, you know, being the new one here, of course, I'm learning my way. I mean, Bob has his way of making calls, Jennifer, Rachel, we all have our ways of making those calls and, and being able to build that relationship so we can help folks sell their home, or get it listed, or, you know, and it's just such an important factor for what we do. I mean, and then documenting everything for follow up. If I didn't get a hold of you this week, maybe I'll get a hold of you next week. So I just set up those reminders so I can keep the follow up process going. And that's pretty much my theory for how
Well,
I do.
it's a strategy, Misty, that's been working for salespeople for ever. And like I said in our last podcast, the reason that good salespeople do it is pretty simple because it works. It hasn't changed. And it kind of remains constant. The one thing that we know about in sales is that communication is the key to success. And I'm not minimizing the value of electronic communication, whether it be email or text messaging or whatever method you use, not minimizing that at all. But voice to voice, communication always seems to be the best. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to share what I do. I am an old school, kind of old fashioned, you can call me a dinosaur, phone prospector. I love calling people. I make it a point to call two categories of people I know and people I don't know. Now, the people I know, they love hearing from me. They love to chat. They love to have conversations, past clients, friends, family members, all of those folks that are just come into my life, on a normal daily basis, and never let them forget that I am in the business of real estate and I'm always here to help. So that's, the one group, people I know. Then there's the people I don't know. So I have foundationally built my business for literally 30 years on nonstop prospecting to expired listings, canceled listings, and FISBOs. I've been doing that for years. And it sounds like an unreachable goal, but it's so easy. I make it a point, make every effort to reach out to expireds, FISBOs, and try to engage 60 conversations a week. Now that sounds like a lot of conversations, but it's really not. It's amazing to me how many people that they want to talk to you. And I use exactly the same dialogue that, Misty just referenced. I don't try to say, "Hey, can I list your house? Hey, I don't do that. Sometimes the relationship, although if it happens quickly, that's awesome. But sometimes the relationship may take weeks or months or even a year. I can't tell you how many times I've had expireds or FISBOs reach out to me and said, you're the guy that's been contacting me the most. Your persistence is impressive. Can we talk? I just look for that casual conversation. I take tons of notes in my CRM as I'm walking through my auto dialer. And I find that to be very, very helpful because second time I can call them, I can say, "Hey, how's your little puppy Daisy? Did you get your kids successfully into nursery school?" All these things that are, kind of developing friendships and relationships. Sometimes they take a while, but the key to all of it for me is consistency of making the phone calls. And I combine that with a mail campaign. I have a very aggressive mail campaign that blends mail, call, mail, call, mail, call. And sometimes I'll even say, "Hey, you may have received a piece of mail from me already. I'd love to chat with you." So that's my system. I do make it a point to make phone calls 5 days a week. Always do it. What's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You just do a couple of calls a day, and it's really not that hard to do 60 calls a week. And that's what this mastermind is built on. Would all of you agree with me?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it just makes my heart happy that we get to share this with our sales colleagues, whether you're in real estate, whether you're a loan officer. We don't care if you're selling widgets. It doesn't really matter to us. If there's a way that you can improve your sales skills using the Work First Mastermind, I would encourage our viewers, pick up the phone, DM us, call us. We're always glad to talk. We get nothing out of this other than one step closer to the working and living toward the Get by Giving philosophy. And all of us are very, very open to sharing. And we'd love to do that for our viewers and our listeners that take the time to watch these podcasts. The couple of things that we've really learned is that sharing is a critical part of what we do. That's what masterminding is. But the foundational principle, I guess that's the way to say it, is making calls. Yes, it might be a little bit old fashioned. No argument there. It's none of us are against technology. We all love technology. We all use technology. We all integrate it into our businesses every day. But communication through old fashioned phone calling still works. And we have experienced that in our first 90 days of the mastermind, the Work First Mastermind. And trust me, when you start using the whole concept of working first, it has to start with developing your phone skills and using them on a day-to-day basis. Would all of you guys agree with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that all of us were able to share that with you. Jennifer, Rachel, Misty, thank you guys so much for sharing what you've learned and how you're integrating it into your business. To our viewers, thanks for taking the time to watch these podcasts. We hope you find them useful. And again, please feel free to reach out to us anytime, whether you want to DM us, whether you want to get us to a personal conversation. We're easy to reach. And take a minute to like and subscribe our podcast, Keeping It Real in North Carolina. We're so glad that you took the time to watch our podcast. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.